Hi, this class is on course activity completion and restrictions, and the first part of it is going over activity completion. Now, activity completions can be used for a number of things, and the first thing we're going to talk about is how to use it for things like badges. In order to award badges, you have to award it based on something that happens, and that those things that happen are completing specific activities. So I'm using a course that I stole from somebody else, and I already kind of reorganized a little bit, and it was just one I found with no activity completion being used yet, which is why I used it, because it's hard to explain if you've already got stuff set up. So first of all, to enable activity completion, you go to Edit Settings in your course, and you go down to the bottom under completion tracking, and you change it from the default of no to yes. And I have to do that first in order to use completion tracking in a class at all. So if I were to look right now on reports, so if I go to reports and I go to activity completion, there's nothing there because there are no activities to complete yet in this class. And just so you know, activity completion is not a activity in its own. It's taking something you've already got in Moodle and just turning it on. So I'm going to go down to this Unit 1 for government, and there's a whole bunch of activities in here that we can use. And so I'm going to use one of the first activities on here. So I'm going to use this Declaration of Independence notes. So I'm going to click on that. And when I look at this Declaration of Independence notes, it's an assignment that students are going to get. And I'm going to click Edit Settings. And then down, it's set up just like any activity that you would have, but down at the bottom now, I go to the activity completion, and I have some options. So by default, because because I just turn it on, it says students can mark the activities completed, and I have the option of do not use completion or show the activities complete when some conditions are met. And when I do that, you can see all of a sudden these things down here stop being grayed out. So what is it that students have to do for me to consider this activity complete? So I can say all they have to do is view it. I have to receive a grade, or maybe they just have to submit the activity for grading. And that's up to you. I usually default to have to receive a grade to consider it completed. In other words, I have to verify that it's done and grade it. But on some things like URLs and videos maybe they watch, maybe they just have to view it to complete it. So as soon as I add this, so students must receive a grade to complete this activity and return, now that becomes something that I can use other places to say, don't do this unless this is done. So that's an activity completion, and that's all it is to turning it on. Now, one of the options that were back there, and I'll go ahead and come down and click on another one on this. So here's a different activity, and I'm going to go to Edit Settings and go down to Activity Completion. One of the other options is that students can manually mark it as completed, and that's what the default is on there. And what does that mean? That means that because I've turned on activity completion, all these things on the side, if they're a solid box, means a student can just say, yep, I've done with that, yeah, I've done with that, yeah, I've done with that. Now, I don't personally use that at all anymore because students can just check it without doing anything. They don't even have to read it in order to say it's done. So I tend not to use that one. The ones I use show up as dashes. So the one I've got, you can see the one I just did, it's dash, meaning I can't just say it's done. I have to do something for that check mark to show up there. So although all these came on as manually when I turned that on, I don't use it that way at all. I go and change it to edit the settings and go down here and say activity completion. I never use students manually. I always show is complete. Either it's not tracked at all or it's tracked by something happening. Okay, they had to come to this page in order to complete it. They at least have to have come to it once and read the instructions in order to complete it. Or for instance, they have to receive a grade, or they have to submit it. And frequently I do use the submit because I might use this as a restriction to go on to the next thing. And so if they haven't submitted it at all, sorry, my lights turned off, there we go. If they haven't submitted it at all, then I can't do that. So those are the two things. Well, I use all three of these. Sometimes I don't track it at all, or I say has to receive a grade. In other words, it's something I'm saying to move on, they have to do that. Or as long as they've submitted it, they see the next assignment, I'll come back and grade it later. So those are the options we use for activity completion. And you'll see there's different ones on there. I can also go, and you know what, let's go to one of those on a specific test. And these are all quizzes, so they're all test modules. So on a test, let's look at the settings on this test. The grade is out of, I'm going to have to edit the quiz in order to see that. It's out of 65 points. So I can do a completion based on how they do out of 65 points. So if I go and do edit settings, and this is only true on a quiz, if I go to activity completion, I can say activity is complete when the following is true. Student must receive a grade, and do I want it to be a passing grade in order to pass? And that's where this grade up here, what is a grade to pass? Out of 65, maybe I'm saying they have to get a 55 for me to say they have completed this activity, because look, I've allowed unlimited attempts. Again, it's not my class, but let's say I did. I allowed unlimited attempts on this activity, so they can come back and take this quiz as many times as they want to, but in order for them to be done, they have to get 55 out of 65 in order to move on to the next available activity. So I've said has to receive a grade, and they have to receive a passing grade. Again, this has nothing to do with A, B, C, D grades at all. It only has to do with how many points out of, in this case, 65, do they have to get to move on. So I've said 55. And if you did a limited number of attempts, now this says unlimited, so, but what if I said 10 attempts they can make? Then you could say require a passing grade, or all available attempts are completed. That's if you have a limited number of attempts. You've said, hey, I need you to try this 10 times. If you can't get a 55 after 10 times, then you can move on. But until that time, you have to keep redoing this quiz until you can get 55 out of 65 points. That's activity completion in a nutshell. We'll go on to restrictions in the next video.